Hello everyone, I am Myoung CHOI and I work for Korean Fire Protection Association. I've been working here more than 14 years as an inspector and a researcher. From now on, I am going to deliver a presentation about property risk management based on safety inspection. In South Korea, there is a unique system that is requiring mandatory fire insurance that is affected safety inspection results for large buildings or factories. Today, I'd like to introduce property insurance system for fire in South Korea and how it is linked with safety inspection, or also known as technical survey. In chapter 1, I am going to tell you about background of mandatory fire insurance law and mandatory field inspection system in South Korea. In chapter 2, risk grading system on risk measurement process for safety inspection of Korean Fire Protection Association. And there are a lot of approaches and researches to predict fire better all over the world and KFPA. I'd like to share some interesting researches here in chapter 3, introduction. In this page, I'd like to tell you about background of mandatory fire insurance law in Korea. There was a huge fire in 1971 at the Myoung Hotel, which caused a lot of casualties. 163 people were dead. You can see the incident and the link here. And the following year, 1972, there was another big fire at the Seoul City Hall. 53 people died. A series of huge tragedies made the government enact the special law, which is called Act on Indemnity for Disasters Due to Fire and Fire Insurance Contract in 1973. The special law contains two main items. In order to prevent fire, Korean government forced fire insurance to establish KFPA. The main role of it is conducting mandatory safety inspections for specific buildings that a lot of people in and out. And secondly, it enforces mandatory fire insurance system for specific buildings to prevent liability issues. Like I mentioned before, the Korean Fire Protection Association, KFPA, was established by the special law I mentioned before in 1973. KFPA is an insurance-funded non-profit organization devoted to mitigating death, injury, property, and economic loss due to fire and related hazards. What does KFPA do to protect people's life and property from fire? KFPA mainly conducts mandatory safety inspection for specific buildings to prevent disaster periodically. We also support underwriting activities for fire insurers using our inspection research. To improve life safety culture, public education program is rolled out every year. R&D, test, certification are conducted in subsidiary laboratory of KFPA, also known as FILK, Fire Insurance Laboratory of Korea. The main role of KFPA is conducting safety inspection for specific buildings. So what is the specific buildings? Specific buildings are those having high risk and high casualty potential. They are designated by the special law I mentioned before based on the sizes of them. You can see some list of them here. There are about 50,000 specific buildings in South Korea, factories which area is more than 3,000 square meters or more, and buildings of more than 11 stories are some of them, and the number of specific buildings is increasing every year. This page, I will introduce briefly the process of safety inspection. KFPA informs specific building owners or managers before and conducts safety inspection. After inspection, KFPA gives recommendation for them to improve fire safety, and if critical defects are detected, they are informed to fire department or municipal government. And summarizing inspection results in order to provide underwriting information for fire insurers in South Korea. Fire insurance companies should make fire insurance contract based on the adjusted insurance rate provided by KFPA. I will introduce again how safety inspection works from the standpoint of building owners and fire insurers. For building owners, we give recommendation after safety inspections. If critical violations are detected during the inspection, we report those to authority having jurisdiction, such as fire department. For fire insurers, we provide underwriting information, including risk grading results after safety inspection. Based on those results, insurers should apply premium discount. On this slide, I will briefly explain overview of fire insurance calculation process. The basic rate of fire insurance is calculated according to the occupancy or industry and building structure. And the rate is subject to discount based on how well the building is protected and maintained. Insurance premium could be increased for high-rise building and could be decreased if some fire protection system is well maintained and the distance between buildings are far enough not to catch fire together. And second adjustment is applied only for specific buildings because they are inspected by KFPA almost every year. The discount rate varies depending on the grade of the buildings. Additional discounts could be applied to specific buildings that have not had a recent fire experience and maintaining a good status. Thus, the fire insurance premium is calculated by multiplying the final uh, adjustment rate by the insured value. And next, I'm going to tell you about risk grading and risk management process for safety inspection. The fire risk index is calculated by evaluating the risk factors and safety measures of the building at the time of inspection. The fire risk index is largely divided into hazards and countermeasure factors and is calculated by dividing hazards into countermeasures. Hazards and countermeasure factors are composed of several modules, and again, the modules are consisted of several components. The items that calculate the risk index are slightly different depending on the character of the building, such as factories, general buildings, and apartments. I am going to tell you about factories here. The basic module is an item determined according to the building year. The floors means some stories of the building, structure, size, fire load of the buildings. And the ignition module evaluate the ignition risk of utility service, such as fire facilities, gas facilities, hazard material facilities, electricity facilities. Process risk evaluate several risk factors in the manufacturing process. The safety management module evaluate the uh, safety management organization, hot work system, smoking and housekeeping status, and etc. And other modules generally evaluate for each fire protection system, such as standpipe or sprinkler or total flooding gas system, and other equipment such as fire extinguishers or uh, some fire evacuation system or some other uh, component such as related to some fire protections. Next slide. During safety inspection, the KFRI, KFRI is the risk index calculated by KFPA. The risk index is calculated after the inspection step evaluate each item, and it is further divided into 7 safety grades according to the risk index. The distribution of the 6 safety grades, excluding the unevaluated items, is as shown in the graph on the upper right here. We also checked the significance between each item as evaluated by some safety inspectors and the fire. So in order to check the relevance, p-value was calculated. As a result, it was confirmed that most of the items had significance with a confidence level of 99%. I also checked how different the frequency and severity of fires between specific buildings compared to all buildings in South Korea. In order to monitor the kind of how well KFPA control the fire risk compared to other buildings. The fire risk here was expressed as the product of fire frequency and fire severity. As a result, it was confirmed that the fire frequency and fire severity of specific buildings were about just 1/3 of that all buildings. And the fire risk of specific buildings was just about 1/8 of all buildings. Through this data, it was confirmed that the specific buildings had a lower fire risk compared to all buildings in Korea. On this slide, I'd like to tell you about some risk grading system and fire frequency research. In the case of specific buildings, the fire risk is calculated according to the mandatory safety inspection research. According to the risk index, they are divided into safety grades from S grade and 1 to 5 grade and unevaluated grade. As you can see here, the higher the grade, the higher the fire frequency. In other words, poor grade buildings have the high likelihood of fire. And here, I'd like to tell you about some typical risk management process here. First of all, try to identify the risk at the field. And secondly, evaluate those identified risks and some check the level of the risk. And next, try to control according to the level of the risk. And finally, risk monitoring. Evaluate how well the risk control is performed and try to implement the risk. On this page, I'd like to tell you about risk management process using safety inspection. The risk identification procedure is carried out even before the safety inspection. Based on the various fire statistics, the major risks of each industry are identified and the items to be managed are determined in advance. During safety inspection, major risk factors are identified based on statistics or some experiences of inspectors. Identified risk is being assessed by related safety code, standards, and laws. And all evaluated risks are shown as KFPA risk index. Once assessed the risk, KFPA informed building manager or authority having jurisdiction to improve the risk. In order to improve the risk of specific buildings, key items such as improvement history, improvement rate, and risk prediction rate are continuously monitored. For reference, the combined ratio of property insurance by major country is summarized below here. The smaller the combined ratio is, the better. As you can see, the FM Global has particularly small combined ratio compared to others. FM Global is famous for great risk grading system combined with field inspection. FM Global is a good example. When inspection system is well managed, risk could be under control. I am going to share about some outstanding researches about predicting fire. There are a lot of approaches to predict fire better. The New York and Atlanta Fire Department and NFPA, National Fire Protection Association in the United States, developed risk evaluation models using big data. They collect a lot of data, such as traditional checklists carried out by firefighters, and a lot of relevant data, such as complaint data, violation data, energy usage data of the buildings. Those kind of developed fire risk model can be used in many ways. Here is one good example of it. Due to the shortage of manpower of fire department, it is practically impossible to inspect all buildings here. So New York and Atlanta Fire Department developed fire risk models in order to prioritize inspections based on the risk. They applied fire risk models such as Firecast and Firebird to reallocate their limited resources and do their job more efficiently. KFPA is also continuously improving the fire risk evaluation model by trying various methods such as deep neural networks model to better evaluate the fire risk. More detailed information can be found through the link here. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions about this presentation or interested in the task of KFPA, feel free to contact me. I will some email address here. Thank you.